We're talking about a big-time game, Super Bowl 50, and we've got a big-time guest. Actually, the first big-time guest of the show's history. We got Tom Pelissero joining us right now.
The first one in history? Sorry to let you guys
No,
down here.
I mean, so many years ago, Tom, you were nice enough to join us, and we always love spending time with you. And today is the 8-year anniversary of Todd Davis and the Denver Broncos winning Super Bowl 50, becoming champs. What do you remember about that game?
I remember Von Miller rolling up to the podium post-game, like taking off his shoes and doing it in his socks because he had done a lot of work in the course of that game. I just remember waiting him out. Yeah, I mean, it was such a unique year because, this was not the Peyton Manning who had thrown 50 touchdown passes, a few years earlier. This was Peyton had missed a bunch of time. He had the foot injury, and Brock Osweiler was playing down the stretch. Peyton comes back in at the end of the season. He didn't have the arm anymore. He really struggled to get the football out there, but the defense was so good. And offensively, it was just he did enough. He was willing himself. Every time he reared back, I thought his arm was going to come off and go with the football. But he found ways. He was so crafty, at that stage in his career, and it was a perfect way for him to go out.
It really was. And now when we talk about this and talk about how the team evolved from the 2013 offense that was record-breaking to then the defense that was able to win the championship, it makes me think of these Chiefs and how they've evolved. How do the Broncos evolve to keep up with a team like the Chiefs with the reality of Mahomes being here for a long time?
Well, that's the issue is, there were some really good AFC East teams over the course of Tom Brady's career, and it's hard when that guy's in your division. It's hard to break through. So, and the entire division now, especially, obviously Sean Payton being in Denver, but you got Andy Reid, you have Jim Harbaugh with the Chargers, and then you've got this, the unknown of, we know how the Raiders finished under Antonio Pierce, but he's, very new to the coaching game, so we'll see how that piece of it plays out, but it looks like one of the toughest, if not the toughest division in the NFL right now. So, the biggest thing for the Broncos is just figure out the quarterback, because we talk about that was Peyton Manning's last game in Super Bowl 50. And, 8 years later, you've gone through a dozen. I don't know what the total number of starting quarterbacks is, but a lot. A big move, which I understood at the time why they were doing it, to go get Russell Wilson for a variety of reasons to this point. That has not worked out. Until you are able to get a quarterback in, it's just hard to compete, especially when you've got maybe the greatest player we've ever seen in the same division.
Yeah. I totally agree, and I feel like with the division being so tough, I feel like that's what you don't want. You almost want the cakewalk to the AFC Championship where everybody's healthy. Now they're going to be battle tested, but I think they're going to be dinged up a little bit having to go against such great coaching, such great competition for multiple games throughout the season.
Yeah. Where do the Broncos go from here with Russell Wilson? Because Sean told us at the end of the season that they're going to make a decision sooner than later. He's going to let Russ know right when he knows. And we're now like a month away from that conversation. Is there any chance Russ is back, or are they just waiting for the right time, you think?
Well, they've got to figure out what their plan is, I think, first and foremost. And there's money that's already locked in for 2024. So that's... that's on the books. All you're talking about is, I think it's the third day of the league year, right, where the additional guarantee for 25 triggers. So you've got time. I don't think, and I'm not speaking for the organization here, for Sean or George or anybody else, but I would think this is not a situation where you're going to, give him a big send-off and let's release him early on so he can, go find his new team. I mean, based on how things played out, and based on the type of things that were being said by various sources close to Russell Wilson last year about everybody in the Broncos organization, I don't think they really owe him anything at this point. I do think that to the extent that Russell Wilson could still be a starting quarterback somewhere in the NFL, if you are, in fact, going to move on from him, it would probably behoove the organization to do that sooner than later, to hope Russ then takes up one of the spots that otherwise might be competing with you for, whether it's in the draft or a trade or free agency, competing for a different quarterback.
Where do you think he's going to go? But also, what do you think would be the most fun? Which team would you want to see him go to and compete with?
I mean, there's so many teams that don't have a guy right now. I mean, the most fun would be he goes to Vegas and then plays the Broncos.
That is the answer.
That would be nerve-wracking.
That would be pretty awesome. But no, I mean, it's hard because he didn't play bad last year. He certainly played better than he did the previous season. He had lost weight. It sounds like all the, the personality stuff, the leadership, all that was improved from where it had been the previous year. But it took such a weird turn, and the Broncos approach him with the type of offer that in their minds would actually keep him with the Broncos into 2024. It would dramatically, at minimum, raise the chances he was still on the team. And Russ and his agent, who only has one client and really hasn't gone through any sort of adversity from a contract perspective in the past, said, no, and, consulted the PA, which is a fairly common thing. The Broncos consulted the NFL Management Council. Again, these are all normal things. And then it got blown up into this, Russell the martyr, and look what they did to him. And they came to him. Contracts get adjusted. You know this all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
Sometimes it's a pay cut. Sometimes it's, hey, we move this around. We need the flexibility. Yep. But those conversations only happen if they're trying to keep you.
Yep.
If they wanted to just get rid of you, they would go, you're out.
Right.
You're gone. We're going to cut you. That's the thing that got miscast about this entire deal. This was a plan to try to go, hey, we do need the flexibility because we don't know what's going to happen in 2025. But if we can adjust this and push back the vesting date, then you'll be the quarterback in 2024. Said Russell still get his money because they owe him all that money. But is he playing football or is he collecting that watching games at home like us?
Right.
Is there any way to salvage this relationship? I feel like every team has issues, and the longer you play in the league, you realize not every head coach likes every quarterback that they've ever had. Was this too public for them to kind of get back to a common ground and then put together a good season?
Well, that's the issue, is the public part of this. And this became such a big deal. And there was so much misinformation that was being leaked out from, I can't say for certain who it was, but certainly appears to be coming from the quarterback side. It becomes harder to put that toothpaste back in the tube now. But to the extent that Russell Wilson's best chance to start somewhere in the NFL this year might be in Denver, and that the Broncos have relatively little flexibility from just a cap perspective. In other words, Russell Wilson's taking up the same amount on the cap, or if not more, by being off the team than he is on the team. Right. So that's money out the door. Yeah. So would you rather he plays and for one more year and then you can draft the guy and you can develop him, whatever, or would you rather just cut ties? That's where they're not ruling anything out because organizationally, there's only so much you can do. Now, you could make some trades. They got calls on Surtain last year. They obviously had talks on Judy, Sutton. Like, there's all kinds of guys you potentially could move on from, get more resources, make a big, bold move to trade up in the draft, which Sean Payton's never been shy about borrowing future resources to try to win right now. But it's still hard, and you still owe Russell Wilson that money, minus whatever offsets he would get if he goes to some other team. That's where I don't think that anything is completely off the table, but fair to say that it would be surprised if he comes back.
You mentioned the draft. Is that the area, if it's not Russell Wilson coming back, do you think that's the area they find their quarterback this year?
I mean, I think that's the way you would ideally like to build it, but having said that, Sean Payton hasn't had a whole lot of rookie quarterbacks through the course of his career. He got Drew Brees, from the Chargers several years into his career, and that was mainly his guy. And even when he had to start somebody else, it was, Taysom had been there a while. Jameis was a veteran by the time he got to New Orleans. He hasn't, had to do it. I think that, Sean's inclination, listen, they went into Week 18 last year preparing like it was the Super Bowl. Sean didn't want 8-9 on his record. He wanted to go 9-8. This all matters to Sean. He wants to win now. And just like you saw last year with McGlinchey, where, hey, offensive line, we got to fix this right now. We're going to spend whatever it takes, get him in here. We really want Riley Moss in the draft. Fine, we'll give up next year's 3 and this year's 3 and go get him. When he sees something he wants and he thinks this is going to help you win, he's not afraid to give up whatever it takes. The quarterback position is hard, man. Yeah. And whether you are moving up for a quarterback in the draft or you're trading assets for a veteran, which I don't know how many veterans would really make a ton of sense in Denver. I mean, the main free agents are Kirk Cousins, who's going to get a lot of money, Baker Mayfield, who certainly seems like he's inclined to go back to Tampa at this point. It's Ryan Tannehill, who's available for a reason. In Sean Payton's mind, does he even regard a Tannehill as a Baker as a big upgrade over a Jarrett Stidham, who you've got on the cheap right now? Or can you just roll with Stidham for now and draft a guy or 2 guys and develop them? These are all the conversations they got to kind of have as they move forward here. Big picture, you'd love to get the veteran player, or you'd rather get the rookie for the long haul. But again, Sean's not really dealt with rookie quarterbacks a whole lot through the course of his career. So some interesting decisions ahead.
If the Broncos decide they do want to go the rookie route, and so you start by moving on from Russell Wilson, that would only leave Jarrett Stidham and Ben DiNucci on the roster. Do you think they just ride with those 2 going all the way to the draft, or do you think they try to clean that up a little bit beforehand with another veteran? Or
are you asking if Ben DiNucci is going to be the number 2 quarterback for the Broncos in 2024?
I'm really hoping you're going to say no.
I mean, DiNucci, he had that start against the Eagles back in It was a little beyond him at that point. But he's hung, credit to him. He's hung in the league for a while here because there is something with him. He just, coming from the program he did and everything, like you gotta put in some time on task.
Yep.
No, I think that. The Russell thing has to play out by mid-March. Again, they could take another swing at trying to get him to adjust his contract. There's no way he's coming back on the existing contract because then 2025 will vest. That's off the table, which again is why they approached him proactively once before training camp and then again at the bye week to try to do something. If Russ surveys the landscape and realizes this is his best chance to start, maybe he comes back. If not, those decisions are going to be made, I would think, before the start of free agency. Again, because if you're the Broncos, you have a vested interest in Russ landing somewhere, not just because you get out from under a little bit of the money, but also that takes out one team you're competing against.
Yep.
I would think that you've got some type of answers there. If they don't make a move for another player in the early stages of free agency, that's where I think the realistic possibility becomes they're going to draft somebody, roll with Stidham for 2024.
Tom, this has been awesome. My last question for you, George Payton's future, what do you think it looks like? And it does appear that he is part of this, and how key is that continuity between Sean and George?
I know Sean and George worked well together last year. Sean's got a very clear vision of what he wants it to look like. I know he just brought in one of his guys from the Saints here. We'll see over the course of time how all that stuff develops. George Payton's still highly respected within the league. If at any point he became available to go someplace else, he'd have another job in about 10 seconds here. So those are all, inner building dynamics that'll have to play out here. But if you're Greg Penner and you're the ownership group too, I think there's something to be said for kind of having a dynamic where it's not Sean running everything all the time on his own, which was kind of how at times it was in New Orleans here, having kind of a counterbalance. George is an easy guy to work with. He's obviously, well-versed in draft, pro personnel, everything else. Those are all things that I think we'll be talking about maybe after the draft.
This has been awesome. Thank you so much for your time. You're the ultimate insider. I'm sure you hear this all the time, but it feels like you're texting me all the time because I got Twitter notifications on for you.
I
So
appreciate that.
thank you so much,
Yeah,
Tom.
you got it, man.
Thanks for the
Thanks,
insight.
Appreciate it.
Man,